So today I want to share with you why every freight broker should do a SWOT analysis. Now, you're probably looking at me like I got a big green eyeball sticking out of the middle of my head, and you're saying, what in the heck is a SWOT analysis? So a SWOT analysis is a brainstorming process that is designed to help entrepreneurs and business leaders, management within an organization, to help create a solid business strategy to maximize the company's growth. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay. So that's what this analysis is all about. What you're trying to do is you're trying to sit down and take a top-down view of your business so that you can fully understand the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. And then you can create a strategic plan on how to mitigate your risk and leverage your strengths and opportunities. Okay, so that's really what this comes down to. Now, every business should do this. This is a common business practice. The objective of the SWOT analysis is to reduce risk, improve business performance, and create a competitive advantage. All right, those are some of the big reasons why you want to do it. The key here is creating a SWOT analysis. This is where a lot of people struggle. They'll sit down with a piece of paper and they'll start brainstorming. And what they're not quite sure of is how to identify their strengths, how to identify their weaknesses, how do I identify the opportunities and threats, right? So that's part of what I'm going to walk you through today. So we're just going to take, for example, I'm actually going to share my screen really quick. So right now you should be seeing the first page of the template, which is how to use the freightbrokerbootcamp.com SWOT analysis template. Okay. If you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you a link where you can actually download this Google Sheets template, right? This Google Doc template. And you can see here what you've got is basically a brainstorming document where you'll put your company name in. You can list your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Now, when we talk about strengths and weaknesses, those are typically relevant. Those are looked at as internal. Opportunities and weaknesses are looked at external, right? So when you want to break it down, think about it that way. And a couple of things that you can do here is really when you're sitting down to brainstorm, take each one of these separately, think about the strengths. And for example, what you want to start doing is you want to start asking yourself questions, right? Ask yourself questions and then answer those questions. For example, if you're within your business, depending upon what stage you're at, right? What's your experience level? If you're a startup and you're doing this, what is your experience level? What experiences do you have that help you become a strength for you in starting and launching a freight brokerage? So one of my strengths was sales. I had a sales background. So that was one of the strengths that I had, right? I also had a strong background in technology, right? Because I owned a software company at one point. I had also had some entrepreneurial experience. So that was a strength. I'd already been through this a little bit. Now, if you're already an operational broker, you're going to ask some different questions. Maybe you've already been doing this for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years. You're going to ask questions like, what processes are we using that are successful? Other questions you might ask is, what are the strongest assets that you have? How secure is your customer base, right? What gives you an edge over your competition, right? Do you have access to capital? And with all brokers, most brokers have access to capital because they have access to factoring. Do you have a strong network? For example, if you were a truck driver for 5 or 10 years, do you have a strong network of carriers and a strong network of shippers that you've worked with? So those are all examples of things that you can look at and you would list them in your strengths category, right? So that's the strengths part, right? Start asking yourself questions. Again, this is a brainstorming exercise. There are no bad answers. You can always go back and edit this later. But what you want to do is you want to start jotting these down on paper. And then once you finalize them, you're going to add them to your strengths, right? You're going to add them right there in the strengths section of your SWOT analysis. All right, so let's move on. For weaknesses, the same thing. Again, these are internal. So you're thinking about your weaknesses, your company's weaknesses, your services weaknesses, right? So you're going to start thinking about, what could hinder your growth process, right? What could hinder your growth curve? In what areas do your competitors have a big advantage over you? What skills are you lacking? For example, one of the skills that I see most lacking for startup freight brokers and freight agents is sales. It's the reason why I put together the Freight Broker Sales Accelerator, right? I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that Freight Broker Sales Accelerator is a 5-week sales coaching program where I teach that entire process from cradle to grave. And most freight brokers and freight agents need that because they don't have that process in place. They don't have a proven process for getting customers, right? Another question is, do you have enough funding as a startup to weather those early days? Do you have enough of a runway? Do you have at least a few months of funding in order to start getting your first few customers to start generating cash flow, right? Those are the types of questions you're going to start thinking about. Again, this is when you're focusing in on the weakness. Now we've covered the strengths and weaknesses, which is those internal attributes, right? Now we're going to talk about external, right? So we're going to start talking about opportunities and threats. Let's talk about opportunities for a minute. So in opportunities, a question you might ask is, how can technology help to enhance or improve my service, right? How can I leverage different technology, whether that be new TMSs or load boards or phone systems or other technology? How can I leverage that technology to enhance my services, track and trace technology? So this is a big question. In what way can you turn your strengths and weaknesses into opportunities? Now think about that for a second. In what way can you turn your strengths and your weaknesses that you've already identified into opportunities? We talked about before, one of your strengths might be you have a strong network of shippers that because you were a truck driver. How could you convert that into an opportunity, right? Because that's what we're talking about now, right? You've got those old bill of ladings, you've got those old business cards, you've got those records that you could access and leverage. You may even have some of those people in your personal cell phone on speed dial because you've done so much business with them. So that's an example of how you might answer that question. A couple of other, what are current trends that you can leverage? What trends are going on right now that you could leverage as an opportunity? You got to think about that specifically as it relates to the economic climate, but more specifically as it relates to your specific niche, right? So for example, if you're in the produce niche, is it produce season right now? Are you in a position where you can take advantage of different produce seasons that rotate throughout the year? Because again, they don't always ship oranges out of Florida, right? I mean, that's the classic example. They don't, they produce oranges, but there's one window of time when the majority of those oranges are harvested and transported. So where do you go from there? What state do you go to? What different produce do you do? So that's where I'm talking about what changes are going on that you can take advantage of. Another one is, are there upcoming events that the company can participate in, whether that be trade shows, whether that be, networking type events? Those are other things that you want to ask. So those are where opportunities lie. And then the last one we're going to talk about is threats. Okay. This is one that everybody gets worried about. This one is where the sky is falling. But the fact is, you have to understand what are the threats that are out there. There are immediate short-term threats, and then there are long-term threats. What do you want to look at is this. If you have carriers already, are they capable of supplying the services that you need at the price that you need? Right? That's a threat. So you have carriers maybe you've done business with. Are they healthy financially? Are they able to survive and thrive at the rates and where the economy is today? If not, you need to find other carriers, right? Because that's a potential threat that could disrupt your business. What future technologies could affect your business? In a negative way, right? Let's think about future technologies that affect you in a negative, because this is a threat. That question can be on both sides, an opportunity and a threat. So you need to think about it that way. Is your business prepared for unforeseen situations like a global pandemic or financial instability? Those sorts of things. We just went through a global pandemic a few years ago. Could you operate in that situation? I mean, you need to think about those things. What would you need to do? The cool thing about being a freight broker is if you're a solo broker, then you're operating from home. So you're already remote. If you're operating as an agent model, most of that is remote, right? So there's a lot of advantages there that, what could be potential threats for some companies, particularly like for example, like a C.H. Robinson or a TQL or a Coyote. Those are really, a global pandemic is something that could really crush them. But when you're operating from home, if you've got to work remote, it makes it a lot easier. So those are the types of things I want you to think about. And then last but not least, what trends can become a significant threat to you? You need to think about these things. So now I think you have a sense here now as to the basics of how this would work, right? How this SWOT analysis would work. So let me just swing back over here really quick. The key here is this. Remember, the goal of the SWOT analysis is to brainstorm and to come up with ideas as an entrepreneur to allow you to create a solid business strategy. So after you've done this SWOT analysis, the important part is that you take that data, you take your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, and then you put that into an actionable plan. Now, that's sometimes a little bit harder than the actual SWOT analysis, but the reality is putting this SWOT analysis probably won't take you more than an hour to put all those things down on paper. Now, you're probably going to have to spend some time thinking about the strategy. But what I want you to understand is imagine having that SWOT analysis and doing it once every 3 to 6 to 12 months and referring back on that. It obviously gets a lot easier over time, but a lot of those things will stay the same and there'll be some minor tweaks. Maybe 10 or 20% of the SWOT analysis will change, and it makes it a lot easier for you to create an actionable strategic plan, right? And to put a strategy in place that will help you to navigate not only your skills or lack of skills, your opportunities or lack of opportunities, but also your threats and your weaknesses. Okay. So that's the reason why I think every freight broker and every freight agent should do a SWOT analysis, whether you're a startup or an established broker. Listen, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, listen really quick, I'm going to give you access here really quick. Let me pull this up. Boom. Here you go. If you guys want to download a free download of that SWOT analysis template, right, that you can use absolutely free, just go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/SWOT. I made it easy as possible, right? You go there, it's going to bring you to a link. You'll be able to download that. You'll be able to then copy that Google Doc into your Google folder, into your Google account, and then you can do anything you want with it. You can edit it, you can adjust it, you can tweak it, you can twist it, whatever you want to do. But listen, make sure you check that out. Make sure you download that. That's probably only going to be available for a limited time, so make sure you download it now. If you're curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent and you're just getting started, check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. We've trained over 10,000 students. We've had that program since 2009. I've personally done over $200 million as a freight broker, and we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. So you can check that out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com.